Father God, I just want to pray right now.
It's been probably the hardest year of my life.
Lived out the Bible.
Youth, but I remember the times that I did say yes.
And it's not about yourself, it's about others.
But God demonstrates his own love for us.
And he is worthy. And that was a big deal.
I want it to be that Jesus will meet you wherever you are.
Then I got to be okay with who I am.
Hey guys, put your nets down, leave your boats and come follow me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of Real Talk. It's the segment where we slow things down and say, hey, let's just be real.
Hey guys, and thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to coming and speaking to you this afternoon or whatever time it is, wherever you are around the world. So we're going to talk about mental health. And what Real Talk's going to do today is talking about, well, let's open up the conversation around mental health. And most people who have a mental health condition and struggle when they're adults, it's usually because it actually starts when they're a teenager and they don't get the help that they need. And so it keeps going and going. And so when part of my role and when we focus so much on youth mental health, it's about making sure that we get help early and that prevents us having issues later on in life. So the biggest issue around mental health is that people actually really don't know a lot about it. There's not a lot of education around it. And so they can be, labels can be put on people where they're told that they're crazy or they're psycho or they're just weird, or even religiously sometimes told that they're possessed by demons or that they're marked as being insane. And all those are really horrible things to say, and they're actually really completely not true. And there is so much misrepresentation on TV and through the media because you only really hear about someone with a mental health problem when they've committed a crime. And so as a society and globally, as a world, we're not really that good about talking about it. So what is mental health and what does good and then not so good mental health look like? So having good mental health means that you know your abilities, what you can and can't do, when normal stress comes along, and we all get stressed at different parts of our life. When stress comes along, we cope pretty well, and you can go to school, or if you're old enough to have a casual job, you are able to turn up to your shifts, you're able to be productive in what you're doing, and that you have some healthy relationships with your family and with your friends. You've got people in your kind of circle that you can rely on, and you have a general sense that you're functioning really well in your local community. And so if you're struggling with mental health, it means the opposite of that what you think, your emotions, how you feel, the way you behave, it really disrupts and changes things about your life. So school or study, assessments completed on time, or even just homework done on a regular basis, doing chores around the house, how you interact with your family and friends, this all begins to change and you're not able to function as well as you normally have been before. Now, maths isn't particularly my strong point. It's not really my thing, but I don't mind statistics. And so when we look at numbers, and so now I'm going to be talking about numbers about young people who are living in Australia, and then I'm going to have a look at some other countries that may be represented this afternoon. So if we have a look at some Australian statistics, 1 in 4 young people, so that's 25% of young people are going to have a mental health condition in 12 months. That's quite a lot of people. So what about other countries? Does that kind of look the same? So I've looked up some statistics for some other countries. And so if you live in Canada, it's going to be around 20%. If you live in America, it's going to be around 16.5%. And if you live in India, I was really surprised at this statistic, it's 7.3%. And so interestingly, it's lower than the global figure. If this, I'm not really sure why. So if you reside in India, or maybe you have immigrated to another country and you are from India, you can maybe pop in the chat why you think it's so low at 7.3%. Is it that mental health just isn't something happens within your culture, or is it that there's kind of things in place where people just don't talk about it and so it's not recorded? I'd just be really interested to know what your thoughts around that are. And if you live in the Philippines, it's 16%. And so if we want to have a look globally, so let's have a look at the whole entire world, it's 20% of young people. So if you have 10 people in a room, statistically 2 of those people are going to have a mental health condition or a mental health problem in 12 months, so 1 year. So if you're struggling with your mental health, you are definitely not alone in that. You may be here today or listening to this afterwards, and that you know you have a mental health illness. You've been to the doctor, they've given you a diagnosis, maybe you see a psychologist, maybe you're even on medication, or maybe you're watching this going, oh, I don't really know anything about mental health. I don't know if it applies to me, or no, I'm in a pretty good mental health space. I'm tracking really well. All these things are valid. And we see mental health as a line where you start here, this is where you may be going really well, and this is where you may be diagnosed with something like a mental health illness, like anxiety or depression, which we're going to talk about. And we all kind of slide down a little bit in our life depending on how well we're coping with things. So specifically with COVID happening the last few years, you've got countries that have gone on extended lockdowns or have experienced a lot of loss. It's normal for you to slip down and not feel so great, but we want to make sure that you've got things in place to help you kind of come back up to where you're in a really good, healthy space. So this afternoon we're going to look at anxiety and depression, and then we're going to open up a really big topic that tends to be quite whispered about, quite not spoken about, and that's non-suicidal self-injury. And so you may refer to that at school, or have heard them talk about self-harm. And so let's start with anxiety. Now, I want to start by saying we all get anxious. It is completely normal to have things in life that make us really nervous. Public speaking, going for a job interview, maybe going for your driver's license test, or maybe you like someone and you're going to ask them out and you just get that heavy feeling inside. There's a whole range of things that make us anxious. You know, where your heart beats faster and you get a dry mouth and you feel really sick in your stomach and you're like, oh, I'm going to throw up. And we've all been there. That's completely normal. Sometimes people refer to it as, oh, I've got butterflies in my stomach, I'm so nervous. But when someone has a diagnosis of anxiety, it means that they have all these symptoms, but they go for longer, they are more intense, and it tends to be a real disruption to them living their lives. There's different types of anxiety. There's not just one shape that everyone fits into. And they all look slightly different, but there's some common things that you may feel or you may notice in someone else around you if they might be dealing with anxiety. So you've got a racing mind, so you're thinking all these thoughts all the time, or maybe you just have blank thoughts and you can't focus on anything. You might have a really hard time concentrating on your schoolwork. You want to sit down and read a book, but you just can't focus. You keep reading the same line over and over again, or watching a movie. Your memory isn't that great. Maybe you're getting confused, or you're having strange dreams even, or you may be focusing on situations and what's going to happen. Something's going to go wrong. So like, oh, okay, my mum's going to pick me up after school. She said to meet at this gate at 4 p.m. What if she doesn't come? What if she's in an accident? What if I don't have the right gate? So things like that where you're... Yes, you can have a cupcake. Okay. It's my little boy. Where you catastrophize situations. So you think of the worst possible case. And you have negative thoughts, like you break down everything you've said. You go to a party and you talk to people, and then you go home and you think, I said this and they said that. What did they mean by that? Did I say something to make myself look stupid? These are all these thoughts that you might have if you have anxiety. And how you might feel is that you've got these really big feelings that are not necessarily linked to something that's happened. You're feeling fearful or worried, angry, maybe you feel impatient, you're not wanting to go out with your friends, you avoid certain situations, and if you do go out, you're being social, and then suddenly you just have this thought of, I've got to go now, that's it, I'm leaving, I'm going right now. And you're not really sure why, but something's just changed. And you can have a hard time falling asleep because you have all these racing things in your mind. And then you've got the physical side, which some of us will be able to relate to, because when we get nervous, we get the same thing. But remember, it's longer lasting and more severe for someone who has anxiety. So chest pains and rapid breathing, your heart rate goes up. You might get a sudden headache, feel dizzy, and you start sweating, and your arms and your legs can actually start to feel numb. You get a dry mouth, you get sick in the stomach. You actually, some people I know vomit. You might just feel tight in your shoulders, in your neck. And sometimes people can have such severe symptoms with how their heart feels and how their body feels that they actually think that they're having a heart attack. And that can be really, really scary. When we look at statistics again, 17% of young people have anxiety. So if this is kind of resonating with you, you are not by yourself. You are not alone standing within this. And anxiety can start when you're a young, small child. So I have a 7-year-old son, and he has social anxiety. And it's been like that since he was 2 or 3, but probably he was born with it. But it can actually come on when you're a teenager and even as an adult. And it can be based around your genetics. So it runs in your family. It's something that you have inherited genetically through your DNA. It can be the environment you grow up in. And it actually can just be the way your brain is wired to think, that you've got a predisposition. You're just inclined to be this way. And then you've also got negative events or different experiences in your life that have happened that have triggered you to have this mental health condition. It definitely doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you, and you don't have, there's nothing wrong. You haven't done anything wrong to make this happen. All right, you just need to know that it's not your fault if this is kind of what is happening to you or has happened to you. And so let's have a look at depression. We all go through periods of really hard emotions. We get sad over something when someone, dies or is really sick, or we feel low when we've studied really hard. I've studied so hard for an exam, and I get the result back and I'm just like, oh, that's disappointing. And you really, it could be even that you finally got the guts to ask out that person that you really like, and they come back and they say no. There's times when we can feel depressed, but it doesn't mean that we have depression. Now, when it comes to depression, it's when for 2 weeks in a row you have felt low or sad for the most of the time. You've had more periods of sadness than you've had periods of happiness. It can also mean that you've lost interest in activities that you used to really like doing. You used to really enjoy soccer, but you just don't want to play it this year. And you've stopped just doing those hobbies and things that you used to really like. It can be really hard to actually maintain relationships with your friends or family. And you can actually withdraw from things. And you may not even be aware that you're doing it or know why you're doing it, but you just don't want to be social. You just don't want to talk to people. You're spending more time in your room. You've got no energy, you're sleeping more. And then when it comes to the weekend, you just want to stay in bed and you want to escape the world, and you just don't want to have to face anything. Now, those things may mean that you have depression and that you're not really coping with life at the moment. There's some other things as well that may be happening, and a lot of it can do with your thinking. You can be thinking, in your, the voice in your head that talks to you, I'm worthless. You might say to people, I hate my life. I never do anything right. Nothing good ever happens to me. You know what? People would just be better off if I wasn't here. And that can actually be indications that you're working towards harming yourself, or maybe even having suicidal thoughts. So if that is happening, please reach out and speak to somebody. When it comes to your feelings, you may be feeling really frustrated, disappointed in life, overwhelmed. And sometimes you're feeling really upset, and then you feel guilty that you're upset, because you come from a good family and your life's been pretty good, and so you don't know why you feel so low and sad when then nothing has happened. That's really normal. And so behaviourally, as I said, you might decide not to go out. You might start falling behind in schoolwork because you get home and you're so exhausted from school. You just sit there and you're reading the same thing, but you can't do your assessment because you don't understand it. Your brain's all cloudy. You're getting confused. You can't remember stuff. And you can't hand something in. And you also might get headaches. You might feel sick. You might have appetite changes where you've just lost your appetite, and so you're losing weight, or you increase your appetite and you're using food to help you cope, and so you might put on weight. Now, you might be sitting there going, hang on a second, this sounds like me. I've got to let my dog in. Come on. Come on then. Or, that's my friend. That's exactly what's happening to my friend or my sibling. And it can be really actually quite jarring to have that moment of, oh, I actually gave a presentation on anxiety and was like, as I was doing it and writing it up, I was like, oh, this is me. Oh, okay. I better go speak to someone about this. This is when I first started getting into mental health. And so if that is you, at the end, I'm going to pop up, I'll go into the chat after this and put up some different places you can have and go and look at some resources that you can have a look at some more information. And let's move on to our last topic, which is non-suicidal self-injury. So what is that? You may know what I'm talking about, or you may not know anyone. You may not even have heard of this before, but it's where someone intentionally hurts themselves. And so it's really important, though, that even if you don't know anyone who does this, it's not in your circle of friends or family, to just listen up and keep it in the back of your mind in case it does happen, and you'll be prepared to go, oh, I know what's happening here, and I can help this person. So non-suicidal self-injury is when someone deliberately hurts themselves. And so if this isn't something that you have ever dealt with before, it can be a real case of, why would someone want to do that? And so the reason they do it is because they have so many big emotions inside. It actually helps them relieve any tension that they're feeling, and it helps them cope with their pain. And so they want to manage their emotions, or they might want to punish themselves. People do use it as a form that, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to be good enough. And sometimes they copy their friends, but a lot of the time people do it because they want to notice. They want someone to notice. They want someone to notice, not to make a big deal about it, but to step in and say, are you okay? What's going on? And it doesn't necessarily mean they want to kill themselves. It's just a tool that people use to cope, and it's pretty common. So 6% of females and 5% of males purposely hurt themselves in 12 months. And I looked at some statistics, which were from a couple of years ago, but are probably quite still relevant. 70% of young people going into emergency are due to self-injury. That's a really high percentage. And hurting can look different to everyone. It's not just cutting. They can, burn themselves, punch something, hit their body against a wall, scratch their skin, take excessive medication as well to internally hurt themselves. There's a whole range. It doesn't just look the same for everybody. But what are some things that you might see in your family, in maybe your brother or your sister or a cousin, or in your friends that you could maybe notice? A lot of it's going to be really hard because they'll be doing things when you're not around. One thing to really keep an eye on is if you see someone that it's super hot, we're about to go into summer in Australia, and they're coming in the heat of Australia, it's 35 degrees, and they have long sleeves on and long pants on. They're covering up what they've been doing. And you invite them to go to the pool, or you want to go to the beach, and they won't come because people might see their marks if they're in a swimming costume. Or you do see an injury and you say, oh, what happened there? And they can't really explain what happened, or they go into this big explanation, this big, oh, I did this and then this happened, and they will tell you too much information about it, or it's the same explanation over and over again. Now, if you do self-injure, oh, comes another dog, come on, or you know someone who does, it's really important to make sure you keep an eye on those injuries, because they can lead to infection if they're not treated, and people can actually sometimes cut too deep, and it ends up really bad complications. They end up in emergency. They can be accidental overdoses and disability, and it's quite serious. So if you do know someone doing that, or you're doing it yourself, just really make sure that you're cautious and that you're going to seek medical attention. And so what are we going to do if mental health isn't good? I'm sitting here realizing my mental health's not that great. I think I am struggling, or you know what, this is really my friend, and I don't know what to do. The first thing is to talk to someone. Talk to your parents or your carer about the best way. Just be honest with them and say, look, I'm laying it all out. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I've been thinking. and I need to talk to you about it. If you have tried before and they've dismissed you, try again, or find someone else that you want to, that you think you can talk to. Maybe a school counsellor, or you can talk to a teacher that you might trust and you get along with really well. Or if you go to church or you go to youth group, you might want to talk to your pastor or your youth group leader about that. Or if you play a sport, maybe you want to talk to your coach, someone that is going to listen to you and is going to help you. Now, there are a lot of kids' mental health lines that you can ring up. There's a lot of websites you can access and live chat to people about how you're feeling. And so I'm going to share those at the end, like I said. And there are some great websites around where you can actually go and do modules on mental health and go, you can do little questionnaires, and it will tell you, you know what, it kind of sounds like you might be struggling with this. And it will give you some modules for you to work through. And I'm going to work through the anxiety one. I'm going to work through the depression one, because that's what they've said. I'm going to see what resonates. And you've got some information then to go and talk to someone and say, look, this is what I've been doing, and this is what it says. And if you are self-injuring, the best thing you can do is try and distract yourself. When you have those feelings come up and you go to do what you do, 10 minutes, try and distract yourself, and the chances are those feelings will pass or diminish greatly. So have a friend you can talk to or text, go have a shower, go for a walk. Colouring in's really good, or play a game online. Message a friend and say, hop online, I need you to play with me right now. Do something that's going to keep your hands busy. And, you know, I'm not coming from everything's great. I self-injured, I started in year 7, so it's about 12, until my 20s. But I want you to know that if that's something you're dealing with now, that the chances of you going into your adulthood still self-injuring is really rare. Not many adults continue to self-injure from when they start when they're young. And so it will stop. Stopping is possible, and you will get to a point where you don't need it to cope anymore, but you need to tell someone so that they can help you with ways for you to cope. And so, that kind of brings us to the end of my talk. But I just wanted to end with something that I heard last week, and it's really resonated with me. It's really been sitting on me, and it says, when someone has a mental health condition, they can lose sight of hope. And it's our job as their family and as their friends to hold on to that hope until they can hold on to it for themselves again. And I think that that's just really important and really lovely. So if you live in Australia, you can ring Kids Helpline, and I will put all the links in the chat afterwards. If you live in America, you can go to the Youth Alliance. Just type that in, theyouthAlliance.com. If you live in Canada, you can go with Hope and Wellness. There's a helpline that you can call, and you can connect with them online, and they've got a free chat as well. If you live in India, you can go and access something called Teen Talk India. So go onto that website, they have a number you can call. And in the Philippines, you can go to a website that is opencounselling.com, and they have a hotline that you can call, and people you can chat to for free to help you work through anything that you maybe have come up, or you just think, now's the time that I really need to speak to anything. So as I said, I'll pop them in the chat. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to stick around for a little bit, but I guess we'll throw back over to Pastor SKAR.